Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're super excited to be here today to talk about industry EPDs and uniquely industry HPDs with the Copper Development Association and Pima. So to set the stage, pretty much anybody attending this webinar is going to have to agree that industry associations do play very important roles in providing a voice for the industry that they represent when it comes to regulation, new legislation, creating a market for its members' products, and particularly sharing information between members, discussing issues to the best of its ability, creating a level playing field for all of its members to compete, and establishing rules for best practices. As product transparency has become increasingly in demand over the last 8 to 10 years, industry organizations have really stepped up to take the lead on establishing those standards, those best practices, understanding the impacts and material health of the products that its industry makes, and setting a direction for taking that industry forward to making greener and healthier products. The disclosures that industry associations make are effectively documents that represent best practices, like all the other kinds of documents they make, that set their members up not only to be equipped to have the kind of documentation that the industry is demanding, but then to further strike out on their own to create their own disclosures in comparison to those products' industry average results. So we're going to talk about all of that today, and we're going to start out by telling those of you a little bit about Sustainable Minds if you're new to us. Then Erin from Copper Development is going to talk about creating industry standard HPDs, and Marcin from Pima is going to tell you about their industry average EPD journey. Then I'm going to show you a little bit of a case study on a building product manufacturer who participated in an industry average EPD and then created their own optimized product-specific EPD compared to that industry average. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how all of this data comes together in the transparency catalog, making it a useful tool for people to be able to find brands, their products, and their disclosures to get into their high-performance building products. So I'm Terry Swack. I'm the CEO and founder of Sustainable Minds. I started the company in 2007. We are a mission-based for-profit company, and our mission has never changed. Our mission has always been to operationalize environmental performance and material health into mainstream manufacturing to drive revenue and growth through greener and now healthier product innovation. So even though those of you who are familiar with the Transparency Catalog, which is a market-facing platform, you'll see how Sustainable Minds has always been the advocate for manufacturers, starting at the beginning of the product life cycle, to help product manufacturers understand life cycle thinking across the full life cycle of a product, helping them design greener products, report the performance of those greener and healthier products, and help them make their products available to people who are looking for exactly those kinds of products. So today we are the only end-to-end product transparency solutions provider in the market. We are a program operator. We create product category rules and environmental product declarations, and a little bit later I'm going to show you our particular type of EPD. We call it a transparency report. It's really an innovation in environmental performance information delivery. We deliver LCA and material ingredient disclosure services, carbon accounting services, so we have to have the technical capabilities to be able to understand if our digital tools and other services actually are delivering on the needs of the industry and upholding the technical standards. And then at the end of the day, we deliver cloud-based tools and reporting and training and education, because all of the activity of creating PCRs, developing EPDs or HPDs or any other kind of material ingredient disclosure for a manufacturer, it's a marketing tool. It's about explaining to the marketplace, here's what our products are, here's how we make them, here's what goes into them. And now, why wouldn't product transparency simply be part of all of the other content that manufacturers create to go to market with so people can make better informed decisions? So really that's our perspective, is integrating product transparency with product marketing so that brands can really leverage those investments to create preference for their brand and their products. So before we go any further, let's just really get clear about what product transparency really is all about. And what it's all about is performance. Environmental performance and material health are two new attributes that are part of the definition of high performance, which is how the industry defines successful buildings today. So the primary intent for manufacturers to do LCAs and material assessments is for their own internal use to gain insights into what's happening with their products. And then from that information, they should be driving that back into their product development and manufacturing processes to make improvements. They never have to actually use those reports to be public facing. The primary use is actually making greener and healthier products. And what's important to understand is generally where there's impacts, there's costs. And so improving performance goes hand in hand really with reducing costs most of the time. So why is improving performance important now? That's because, when LEED introduced product transparency in 2012 as a thing, there were very few manufacturers who had EPDs or material ingredient disclosures. Today, there are almost 2,000, and gone really are the days of just having an EPD or a material ingredient disclosure as being, sufficient. Today, actual performance matters. And that is why you'll see later why the optimized reports are the most popular, because people really are looking for manufacturers who understand the environmental performance and material health of their products and are actively making improvements and are able to explain what they're doing, that explains what the disclosures are reporting. So with that, Erin, we want to hear your story.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me. Great introduction. So let me get started. My name is Erin Smith. I am the project manager from Material Stewardship at the Copper Development Association. And I'm here today to talk to you about how we built our industry standard copper HPDs. There we go. So a little bit about myself. I have a master's in environmental science, which I got at the University of Colorado in Denver, which is pretty close to where I reside now, just a little south of Denver in Colorado. My professional career, I was an aquatic ecologist for several years, focusing on water quality standards, toxicology, environmental risk assessment, and biological studies. After that, I moved on to my project manager role at a whole effluent toxicology lab, where we performed wet testing, which is biological testing on organisms for industries that have discharge permits. So that brings me to today. I'm the project manager of Material Stewardship program at the Copper Development Association, and I work in conjunction with International Copper Association as well on copper as a material. Within that role, I am the manager of the Health, Environment, Sustainability, and Safety Committee at the Copper Development Association, where we tackle various issues related to those 4 categories. I put on here a movement to a future driven by choice, and I think this goes back to what Terry was talking about just a few minutes ago. We are working to equip our members with documents and provide them with these industry documents that they can then use to start to craft their own disclosures and optimize their performance. So a little bit about the Copper Development Association. The Copper Development Association is a market development, engineering, and information service arm of the copper industry. And we are chartered to enhance and expand markets for copper and its alloys in North America. So we are bringing the value of copper and its alloys to society. This year, we are celebrating 60 years, and we're very much looking forward to celebrating this with our members in person later this year. So what the Copper Development Association does is represents semi-fabricators and fabricators of copper products. And these have several applications, including plumbing and tubing and fittings, rod and bar applications, wire and cable applications, and flat products, which contain sheets, strips, and plates often used in the construction industry. And why we wanted to develop some of these transparency documentations is we want to maintain credibility and combat against substitution. So this is our listing on the product transparency catalog at Sustainable Minds. And we have several HPDs that we have developed that cover different product categories, including tubes and fittings, rod and bars, antimicrobial applications of copper, and building construction applications. And as I mentioned before, this is a movement to a future driven by choice. So lots of specifiers and owners are looking for credits in various forms, including LEED. So our HPDs do give credits under LEED 4.1, and this is the Building Product Disclosure and Optimization Material Ingredients List. Our HPDs can also be used for the Living Building Challenge. This is where we look for red list ingredients. So if people are interested, if our products have red list ingredients such as arsenic or mercury or chromium-6, for example, they can go to our HPDs and find out that information. And they're also well building standard applications as well. Our HPDs are acceptable for use for Feature 97, which is Material Transparency Part 1. And this material information is required for that at least 50% of interior finishes, materials, and furnishings to be evaluated and disclosed. So they can use our HPDs for this. And again, it just continues our credibility and helps against substitution. Here I have listed all 10 of our HPDs, which we have on Sustainable Minds website, as well as copper.org. 6 of them apply to tube and fitting applications, 2 rod and bar applications, 1 antimicrobial, and 1 that has to do with copper building construction. So now I am going to get into how we developed our HPDs. So the first thing we did was we decided we were going to leverage ASTM and ASME to start this process. So ASTM is a standards organization developing and publishing voluntary consensus technical standards for a wide range of materials, products, systems, and services. ASME is also a globally recognized source of standards. So what I have here on the right of the screen is the ASTM B280, which is for copper tube and air conditioning and refrigeration field service, which is one of our HPDs that we have developed. And within the first sentence of the abstract, you will see that the specification covers requirements for seamless UNS copper 102, 120, and 122 copper alloys. So within these standards, they call out a specific copper alloy that is to be used when making these products. And we thought that this was the best way to start our HPD story. The next thing we needed to do was leverage the HPDC metals special condition. And if you're not familiar with special conditions, for some types of materials, the ability to identify and characterize substances and or chemical abstract or CAS numbers can be challenging. And this can be limiting in your disclosure documentation, as well as can be limiting in the identification and characterization of hazards, which can then impact your hazard screening. So I thought it would be good to give you an example right here of copper. So under the GHS, or Global Harmonized System, there is classification for copper. And because copper has only one CAS number, it can be difficult because it has two actual forms. So we have copper massive, which are particles of copper that are greater than 1 millimeter in diameter. And then we have copper powder, which are smaller than 1 millimeter in diameter. And why this is an issue is because copper massive and copper powder have different hazards associated with them. Copper massive is often, this picture is of copper cathode, which is 100% pure copper, and that copper is then used by our members to make products. Whereas copper powder is often used for biocidal or anti-fouling uses, and often is in a much smaller form. So when developing these HPDs, we want to make sure that the correct hazard is being associated with the product. And this is a little bit of language directly from the special condition. So this policy allows manufacturers to report metal alloy content in a tandem process. So metal alloys in a product or part can be reported directly on a product HPD or a supplier HPD. And the HPD reporting the metal alloy should always refer to a separate supplier HPD to provide detailed metal alloy composition data and hazard screening data for individual alloying elements. So what that means is, or what we did was, we took option 1. So this option is available to any product HPDs and supplier HPDs reporting metal alloys as content. So detailing this option is the main purpose of the special alloy condition. This option is for an HPD whose main purpose is to report the elemental contents of the metal alloy. And that is what we have done. So in section 1 of our HPDs, we have this small inventory and screening notes, and this talks about our use of the metal special condition. Because we leverage those ASTM and ASME standards, the metal alloys used within the HPD will be called out here. And if someone is specifying and using this HPD, we suggest that they contact the distributor and contact our website to get a list of Copper Development Association members that are fall under this HPD. All of the hazard information was gathered from 2 sources. So we have a website that's unscopperalloys.org, where you can find all of the chemical compositions of over 700 copper alloys. And we have also worked with ToxNot in the shared materials library to upload all of the content of these alloys as well. The next part of our story is maximizing section 5, which is the general notes section. So because these are HPDs that are built off of ASTM and ASME standards, we want to make sure that they're applicable for numerous applications. So within the general notes section, we listed out all potential master format divisions and sections for ease of use. So if you have questions about where you might be able to use this product and where it might be applicable, you can head to that section. So this is a little screenshot of our listing on sustainable mines, and you can see on the left we have all these different section numbers and divisions listed, and each of our HPDs that are applicable for those sections will be shown. Since we had such a large listing and our standards are built off of the ASTM or ASME standards, Sustainable Mines came up with this innovative idea that if you are interested in our HPD, obviously you can just download it right from the website, or if you'd like to learn more about the standard which it was built off of, you can click on the name on the left-hand column. So I have an arrow here to copper tube type K, L, or M per ASTM B88, and what that will do is it'll take you right to the ASTM or ASME website. So if you have further questions about how this product should be used, where it is applicable, you can read through that standard. So overall, we have products in 11 master format divisions and 67 sections. Each of these correspond back to those ASTM or ASME standards as I discussed. And this is our listing. So as you can see, we have numerous sections listed here. So anyone looking through the catalog can search copper and our HPDs would come up, or if they're looking for a specific division and section number that might be applicable to, say, tubing, they will be able to find our HPDs that way as well. So kind of just to wrap things up, what are we doing next? We are working on additional HPDs for product categories that our members might find useful, such as electrical applications of busbar. We are currently working on life cycle assessments for copper and copper products, as well as life cycle inventories. And from that, we will begin the development of environmental product declarations. And the way we are headed at the Copper Development Association is we are going to probably move towards those industry average EPDs, but you know, as Terry mentioned earlier in the talk, we want to equip our members with the documentation they need to then start developing their own disclosures. In addition to that, we are looking at additional certifications. I believe that Green Circle was on a couple months ago discussing some of the certifications that they have available. And I think that would be a great next step for our members to start looking into those types of certifications, such as recycled content and disclosures in other ways. So transparency as a product selection filter. As I mentioned in the beginning, specifiers are looking for credits, and our industry standard based HPDs will help them in numerous ways with LEED, LVC, and WELL applications. These organizations help reduce the hazardous use of chemicals and make sure that those are disclosed when using them in products and buildings. These HPDs start to help us gain customer trust and drive integrity. We want to make sure that we are just being transparent and disclosing the ingredients within our materials and products that we make. And again, it just helps us maintain credibility and combat substitution. And finally, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of challenges and barriers to transparency and sustainability reporting. You know, this landscape is large and vast, and there are so many different reporting schemes, so many different places to report data, that tools like Sustainable Mind are really helping our members to figure out where they can find information, where they can send their customers to get information. And it's been such a great tool for our members. They're very excited about our listing and are looking forward to many more disclosures to be able to be put on the website in the future as we get those together. And that is it from me. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Erin. That was so well done. And I just want to reinforce that the story that Erin just told you about creating industry standard HPDs was an innovation. She figured that out. She was the first industry organization to do that. And actually, we have told other industry associations about what Erin did. And I think she's had a few calls. We've hooked up a few folks, but it really is. And actually, I've had conversations with Wendy Vittori over at the HPDC about this. And there really is now kind of like a foundation for how would you do this for industries that are applicable kind of at the material level. So Erin is all for sharing her process and her stories, and we can help with that too. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded. You will get a link to the recording probably in the next day or two. You can request the deck. Any questions that you have, please put those in the questions panel. We'll get to those towards the end of the webinar. If we don't answer your questions, please leave them on the way out. And we do have a quick set of questions. If you can take a minute to respond on your way out, that would really be helpful for us. And so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Marcin from Pima to talk about the work that you've done and you're doing there. Take it away, Marcin.
Thank you, Terry. My name is Marcin Pazara. I'm the technical director for Polyisocyanurate Insulation Manufacturers Association. It's a mouthful, so in short, it's Pima. I did include a link to our website. If there's any questions, you can also probably contact Sustainable Minds. I will provide my contact information if there's any follow-up questions. What I want to talk about is obviously our industry-wide EPDs today, but I think the overarching message here is that as an association, we continue to drive building envelope energy efficiency. There's been tremendous amount of opposition to that, and I think just from an overall perspective, when you're looking at a building, you're looking at walls and roofs, and once you put that insulation into a wall or roof, it tends to stay there for minimum 20 and up to 60 years. So your best bet is to make sure you follow codes up front to ensure that buildings perform as they should. So just a brief bio. Again, I spent a number of years in schools going through a number of credentials. I think I want to highlight just my career. I've had a unique experience to date. I've been involved in engineering consulting. I worked for Simpson Company and Hager for a number of years. Then I transitioned to material manufacturing, both in roofing and wall products. So I spent a bit of time there at two companies. And when I was at Owens Corning, I had a very unique role. One of my accountabilities was to serve on a product stewardship. And product stewardship is a very unique, I would say, a very unique opportunity to be able to offer perspectives that help to alleviate issues for companies with respect to product development. So again, when products are developed, you tend to ask the tough questions to make sure that health and safety are addressed. That also involves technical perspective. In 2017, I moved on to Pima. I took a role of technical director for the association. And in that role, I lead technical initiatives. I do participate in tremendous amount of co-development activities, as well as lead sustainability initiatives. And both the co-development activities and sustainability initiatives have become our front focus over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. So just a brief overview of Pima, and again, it's not an old association. It really was formed in 1987. There was a pressure from regulatory standpoint to convert the blowing agents in the product. Pima has led the industry as an association to transition away from ozone depleting blowing agents. That conversion was completed in 2002. And then we moved on to other initiatives. There's been some other things we've done on a sustainability side since 2002, but we did, as an industry, develop our first EPD, industry-wide EPD, in 2015, following the industry recognized product category rule that has been created. We have updated our LCA and obviously EPDs in 2020, and we're sort of now looking at a third generation of those documents. And obviously, there's still a number of unanswered questions and things that we're pursuing in the next iteration. In terms of product types, what we're looking at is basically a foam plastic insulation, rigid board insulation that's installed in roofs. Also cover board is part of a roof system, and then wall insulation. Just a one point here, I would say that in terms of roofs, polyiso is installed in 85 to 90% of the roofs because it is a system. It is a system approach. When you look at roofs, you're looking at wind uplift and fire performance testing. The manufacturers who make this type of insulation also make all types of roof coverings and other components that go into roofs. Couple of key points as to why product transparency is important. First of all, it informs the public of what's included in the products. I think it also is becoming a key topic for external stakeholders of what impacts those products have on the environment. And I do have a couple of updates that are not included on the slides because we just had literally conversations with a couple of our raw material suppliers yesterday who are part of the organization, who've alerted us of future endeavors. But I'm going to talk about that shortly. And then again, I think one of the key critical components of industry-wide EPDs is just tracking industry improvements. So you can go up and down. Obviously, each manufacturer of any product can have their independent or manufacturer-specific LCAs and EPDs. But as an industry, I think it's important to track the progress of where the industry is going, what's making things worse, what's making things better. So in terms of product transparency, as I indicated, just maybe a little bit more on the products themselves. There's a couple of different types of products that we have, and there's a number of classes. Obviously, we took that into consideration when we're developing our LCA. Specifically related to roof, we have two main types of products with different types of facers. So this is foam plastic insulation that has facers on both sides. That facer helps to basically make the product. It's a continuous production type of manufacturing setting. So we have the glass reinforced felt type of product, and then we have coated glass product. The GRF product includes sandpaper-based material. The coated glass product is primarily all fiberglass that's coated in a polymer. The polyiso wall insulation board is essentially what we've picked as Class A type of product for our evaluation, which has the highest fire performance criteria. And then Polyiso HD roof cover board is essentially a product that goes on top of the roof insulation to provide additional resilience and resistance. And in terms of the industry average EPDs, what we're seeing is obviously much more demand from manufacturers, architects, and designers for those kinds of documents that clearly spell out and declare, global warming potential, ozone depletion, and other environmental aspects or impacts that our products have on the environment. So just briefly, I wanted to go over with pictures the three types of products. You can see on the left application of the polyiso roof insulation. I am showing two smaller pictures of the GRF faced in the middle and the coated glass faced product on your right. Similar for the roof cover board. You can see that that's a thinner board that goes on top of the insulation. It's much denser. It provides additional R value, but more importantly, it offers significant resilience and resistance to impact and foot traffic, and carries additional compliance and certifications for hail impact resistance. Finally, the wall product, these are typically, in majority of the wall applications, the product is faced with a foil facer. The foil, again, multiple of solutions and could be dual lam, could be tri-lam. So obviously this is not just foil, it's foil that's reinforced with fiberglass or additional layers behind it that's used in the production of the actual board. But I think it's important for you to see how the product is installed and applied. And again, just one point to highlight here, when we did our evaluation, we focused on Class A products, which have carry the highest fire performance classification. And again, that's important because those products tend to be denser in nature and also higher in compressive strength. So this is an important slide. And I think I would just, my overarching message here is there's very little context for you here unless you read the EPDs that we have. I would start by saying that the key reason for having insulation added to your roof or included in your roof and wall assemblies is because of energy savings. If you did not need to reduce heat transfer or restrict heat transfer in and out of the building, insulation would not be necessary. That is the primary role of insulation. There's other aspects of performance characteristics, foot traffic resistance, impact resistance, dimensional stability, certain flexural strength. But at the end of the day, the reason why you have insulation included in the building envelope is because of heat transfer reduction across that building envelope so that you can save operation energy for the building. What's important about this slide is that when you look at the primary energy demand savings ratio, which on the left side, and I can point it here, is 28 to 15. That 15-month return period is very significant. What you're seeing is that, by adding insulation, you're actually recouping quite a bit of energy, operational energy from the building in a very short period of time. If you look at the right-hand side graph, what that shows you is obviously carbon dioxide reduction or recouping period. And again, anything that's below the avoidance ratio, that's lower, is a very good number. And so again, what I'm trying to highlight here is the cost benefit and the impact that insulation has on overall use of energy in the building, as well as environmental impacts for the building. So kind of key learnings and insights. I think it's important, for me to highlight that industry average EPDs provide useful benchmark for manufacturer-specific information. And the reason why that is the case is manufacturers often, and our members following our latest update, have initiated development of manufacturer-specific LCAs and EPDs. But what manufacturers can do is they can benchmark where they are, not only internally to their companies, but also they can benchmark where they are relative to the entire industry. And I think industry can drive change. If you have a group of manufacturers and few of them improve, and another manufacturer that hasn't improved sees that, I think that can drive change. EPDs also contribute important information to whole building design. So that is a trend that I think we see more and more, where you see whole building LCAs and building optimization being conducted. So you're not just looking at single or specific components of the building, you're looking now at the entire building and optimizing the entire building, making that building healthier by selecting different materials, selecting materials that have lower impacts and that are better for the occupants of the building. So I think that trend will continue to move forward. EPDs can also inform general comparison between product types. The reason why I added that is I always want to be cautious, because I think we also see some of those trends where people are very quick to jump and compare one product versus another, and that's fine within a specific product type or category, but you have to recognize that the analysis and the assumptions have to be equivalent. And I think that's a very important point. I continue to make that point when I make these types of presentations, that things have to be equivalent. And so you really have to understand what's in the LCA and how it has been done. What was the process that was involved and included all of the assumptions as part of that analysis in order to make that EPD as comparable as you can. Improvements and innovations, and I think I'll spend a couple of minutes here talking about a couple of things that I said I will talk about, but I haven't flagged it yet in this presentation. But again, in terms of industry, and that's where I'm coming from, obviously we represent the manufacturers of polyiso products. We also have members who provide raw materials to the industry, and those tend to be the sort of the big 800-pound gorillas in the room. We're talking about Covestros, Huntsman, BASF. So we're talking about the raw material suppliers that provide a lot of chemicals. And I know that those have been very hydrocarbon based in the past, but I think understanding those key environment impacts more holistically as individual manufacturers, whether it be raw material or a final product, understanding those key environmental impacts can create drive to improve both the process and the products. So I wanted to flag a couple of important stories and innovations that will be happening or have happened in the past. So first, in terms of recycled content and facers, our industry has transitioned and added recycled content into the facers. Also, from the raw material perspective, the polyol, which comprises around 30 to 40% of the raw materials going into the foam core. There's manufacturers who have recycled content. For example, they're using recycled plastic bottles to convert those back into the raw materials. And something that I've mentioned that I will just wanted to highlight for you. As I said, I had a meeting yesterday with one of our raw material suppliers. And the other big component of our product is MDI or isocyanates. That is approximately 45 to 50% of the raw material of the product. So the polyol is around 35%. The MDI is about 45%. And we have been informed that the entire MDI, MDA, and phosgene industry will likely be fully circular and we'll be using bio-based materials by 2040. So that was actually fantastic news. It's not quick enough, but again, it takes time to convert. It takes time to update the facilities, make changes to the process. But I think that's a great news that we're looking at almost fully bio-based materials beyond 2040, and that's something that's very, very exciting to us. The one additional aspect that from improvement standpoint that we're looking at is assessing recycling opportunities. So again, one thing that I wanted to point out to all of you is when insulation goes into a wall, it stays in that wall unless the building is torn down or there's a deep building retrofit. So looking at a building service life of 65 years, it will stay in that wall for 65 years. When you look at the roof, roofs have to be refurbished. They either have to be recovered, and that's the first step that typically is taken, where another membrane is added, just to make sure that the waterproofing capability of that roof is retained. However, after approximately 40 years, that roof is replaced, and the material is typically discarded, the membrane, the insulation. And if that insulation is in good condition, we are advocating to reuse that insulation and throw it into landfill. We actually had proposals at the most recent co-development cycle, which were opposed, but we'll continue to work on the proposals that would advocate for reuse of insulation. And again, we have a number of opportunities to work with our polyiso producers on other initiatives. So transparency as product selection. So again, I think it's important to flag a couple of things for you. AECs are able to benchmark product types and key environment attributes. I think that continues to be a very important piece. And from LCA and EPD perspective, the key initiatives or the key indicators are GWP, global warming potential, primary energy demand, and ozone depletion potential. So we continue to focus on that. I think the other important point that I would flag is that whenever selecting any insulation product, high R value of the thermal insulation is important, but then you want to combine that with other aspects, the health benefits, the resilience, the durability of the product, so that the product can function properly for extended period of time. And then in terms of trends, I think what we see in the marketplace is growing demand for basically transparency disclosures, whether it's be EPDs or HPDs. And our members are individually working on, and some of them already have HPDs. But again, those types of disclosure, we obviously continue to see growing demand for those to understand what's in the products and what environmental and health impacts of those products are. And then finally, I think building owners, regulators are proposing options to establish limits. We've seen much more activity both in standards, but also in the code arena to include embodied carbon, limits on global warming potential, and that relates to both state and federal regulations and policies. So again, we continue to see pressure to make those changes and move toward that aspect. And again, I think what's going to happen in the future, there's going to be a bigger shift on materials that an impact that materials, carbon-intensive materials like concrete and steel have. But I think that shift is going to go across the board to all materials. It's not going to just stick with those materials. But I think there's going to be some substitutes. There's going to be some alternatives that are proposed, and already we're seeing some heavy timber being substituted for concrete and steel materials in the marketplace when buildings are erected up to 7, 8, 9 stories. So there's a shift of in that scope already. And I think in terms of questions, I think one thing that we always ask ourselves is how quickly will those trends expand to other product categories, to the marketplace, and to the regulatory arena. So I think with that, I just want to open up the or ask if there's any questions related to this material or other presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin. We are going to hold the questions till the end, but that was a very thorough and interestingly technical account, which is what we would expect from you about what you're doing over there at Pima, and a lot of really important progress going forward. Good to hear about the recycling and the circularity and the reuse issues as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the transparency catalog. And so we've heard from industry associations who represent many members, and they're creating transparency documentation for their members, and then their members can go ahead and create their own product-specific documentation as well. And so our commitment to the architecture, engineering, construction, and real estate owner industry is that the transparency catalog contains every single building product manufacturer anywhere in the world making products for the North American market who have invested in one or both types of transparency, either EPDs or material ingredient disclosures. You're going to find every single one of them in the transparency catalog, organized by master format, division, and section. And our commitment is we're trying to make this just easier to understand. It's complicated. You guys just sat through 2 technical presentations. It's really complicated for everybody, but our mission is to really drive this to the mainstream, make the building industry become the high performance building industry. And so we're kind of on the front lines trying to simplify things, make them easier to understand, easier to use, so that people across the board, manufacturers and the AECO industry, can make better informed decisions. So really, again, going back to our company's mission, our goal is to revolutionize high performance building products, selection specification, to grow revenue and brand value for building product manufacturers, and to help them make their transparency investments pay off. When we launched the catalog in 2016, there were only 350 manufacturers anywhere in the world. Today, there's over 1,800, with products in 27 master format divisions across 1,250 sections. And that represents literally tens of thousands of products. It's practically unknowable how many products that represents, again, because if you look at, for example, the CDAs, HPDs, that represents types of products made by some untold number of manufacturers, except CDA has 35 members, and you can actually go from their listing to the site to find their members. But I think today there probably isn't any kind of commercial or residential construction project where you wouldn't be able to find every single material or product that you're looking to use. You wouldn't find a manufacturer who is invested in product transparency. And we recognize when we launched the transparency catalog that the only way really to ensure that manufacturers' products get into the project is if they get into the spec. And that's why from the get-go, the transparency catalog has always been designed as a specification tool or a spec reference tool, and to make things easy to find, literally in a glance. So part of our in a glance capabilities is that we have APIs with a lot of the producers in the market. And so we don't just take the data straight out of the API and kind of show that, oh yeah, they have a declare label or they have an HPD. What we try to do is really kind of unbundle the content and the results of that report and display that in the interface too, so that, again, in a glance, a user can scan all those results very quickly, and based on the criteria that you use to make decisions about products, you'll be able to visually see, using the combination of what's in the tables and the filters, very quickly getting to just the stuff you're interested in using to make decisions. The people on the webinar today are pretty representative of this group of people. It's all kinds of people across the spectrum. It's every level, from interns all the way through project architects, C-level execs. And what that tells us is, and it makes us pretty happy, is that we've done a pretty good job of designing it so really anybody in any use case at any level is able to use the catalog. So I want to give you a very quick little case study about optimized EPDs. Last year we did a webinar with Wes Sullins, who is the lead director from the USGBC, and the webinar was about optimized EPDs and the optimization credits in LEED 4.1. And so the way the transparency catalog is built, our data team, it's an entirely curated data set. Manufacturers never touch the data set. And our data team populates the catalog so that when you actually click on a credit, only the credits that are eligible to contribute, only the disclosures that are eligible to contribute to those credits are what get displayed. So when 4.1 came out and also well introduced an optimization credit, we actually pulled those out. We separated the optimization credits from the option 1 type of credits, just to see, make it easier for people to be able to use the optimization filters and to see if that was something that interested people. This is a quick glance at the manufacturer's dashboard. So the manufacturers who add their products to the catalog get access to this dashboard that not only gives them the results for their own content, because of our mission, we're trying to grow the market, and a way to grow the market is to help create more competition. So every manufacturer can see every other manufacturer's results, and help them decide, wow, my competitor has EPDs for more products than we do. How much visibility are those products getting? And this kind of information is really helping to drive decisions inside manufacturing organizations to make their roadmap around transparency. But the point to this is to show you that EPD optimization credit in this particular date range, which was 6 months earlier this year, not even 6 months, it is the most used rating system credit. People are interested. Performance matters. They want to do business with people who are making actually higher performing products. And so the way a manufacturer can create an optimized EPD is by, one, participating in an industry-wide EPD and then creating their product-specific version and comparing their results to the industry-wide EPD. Or alternatively, if you've created EPDs in the past, you can create a new EPD and compare it to the previous version of the EPD for that product, and then see if there's actually improvements that meet the reporting criteria. So when we do industry-wide EPDs for industry organizations, we make it super easy then for their participating manufacturers to then get their own product-specific version at a very attractive cost and a very streamlined process. And we can actually tell, even before they go through the expense of creating the optimized EPD, we can tell them whether their metrics that are required to meet to get the optimized version actually are eligible. Are they really better or not? And so it gives the opportunity to a manufacturer to tell their brand story. So here's a quick little case study. A couple of years ago, we worked with the Cellulose Insulation Manufacturers Association, CIMA, both of the US and Canada. And what really prompted them to do an industry-wide EPD at that time is that for years they'd been telling the story about cellulose insulation being a carbon sink, but really nobody cared, apparently, and nobody really understood what it meant to be a carbon sink. But given the interest in embodied carbon and recycled materials and circular and recycled materials, they felt it was time to do that industry-wide EPD. So here's the first page of our industry-wide transparency report. That's what we call our EPDs. This is a web page. It lives, in the cloud. We list all of the participating manufacturers on the front page, and we create a free listing in the transparency catalog for every participating manufacturer, because now they can use this EPD for their products and their customers. So when somebody searches a master format section, they're going to see every single manufacturer who participated show up in the results with the associated industry average EPD. So AFT, Advanced Fiber Technology, wanted to move forward with their own brand of cellulose insulation that they're marketing as Carbon Smart. And it did turn out that their results showed a 16% reduction in global warming potential compared to the industry average. And so here's the 3 pages. Here's page 1, here's page 2. All of the LCA content is on page 2. And page 3 of our transparency report is where the manufacturer can tell their stories about what they're actually doing to improve. What have they done to achieve those performance improvements? To get the optimized EPD, and also part of our technical program, it's not enough just to show the improvements by metric or data. The manufacturer also literally has to explain what happened. How are they getting a better result than the industry average? And even though their data was part of that industry average. So again, when you use the transparency catalog, you can use any combination of master format filtering, rating system credits. You can even decide you want to search by disclosure type. You can use any combination of those things in any order to finally filter down to just the manufacturers and the product types that you're looking for. We also have a custom integration with the EC3 tool to make those embodied carbon results, again, understandable in a glance, whether the product is in the lower end of the industry range, the 20th percentile up to the 80th percentile. We link back into the EC3 tool so you can start running their own comparisons. And when you use the transparency catalog, you can get help from the manufacturers whenever you want. There's a contact form that pops up, so Marcin doesn't have to worry about you getting his contact information. You can go to their listing, fill out the form, click the link, call them, however you prefer to get answers. That's all there. The same with copper development. And that's our webinar for today. We appreciate you making time and hope that you learned what you were looking forward to learning and potentially more. And I want to thank Marcin and Erin for telling their stories and putting the presentation together. There were a couple questions that came in, and we'll answer them in the background. Actually, a couple of them did get answered. And again, anything that is specific to Marcin or Erin, we'll pass those along to them and they can get back to you. So thank you and have a great day.